For Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. President Joe Biden delivered his valedictory address, kicking off night one of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, where he shed some tears, received a minutes-long standing ovation, and endorsed his Vice President, Kamala Harris, for the party's presidential nominee last night, after he stepped aside for re-election just weeks ago amidst inside pressure.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. I love my country more.
He was joined by other high-profile Democrats to talk up Harris, including Hillary Clinton, the first woman candidate for a major U.S. political party.
On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris, raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States.
Harris also made an appearance and paid tribute to Biden's 50-year political career in his service as she forged a path forward.
Guided by our love of country, knowing we all have so much more in common than what separates us, let us fight for the ideals we hold dear, and let us always remember, when we fight, we win. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
During Biden's speech, he said there was more work to be done in the remaining months of his presidency, including ending the war in Gaza, which has become one of the most divisive issues of his presidency. During his speech, attendees unfurled a banner that said, "Stop arming Israel." Thousands rallied in Chicago outside the Democratic National Convention, marking day one, demanding an end to the war in Gaza and for other issues like abortion and LGBTQ rights. At least 2 were arrested for breaking through a fence set up by police near the site of the Democratic National Convention. Rylan Petras reports from Pacifica affiliate WZRD in Chicago.
Organizations from all over the country showed up to protest at the March on DNC 2024. All of them advocate for different issues, but the coalition's main demand is to stand with Palestine and to call for an end to U.S. aid to Israel. Andrew Mayton, representing the People's Power Assembly in Baltimore.
We came out to march on the DNC, deliver the message that says start addressing the issues that are facing the masses of people in the U.S., joblessness, poverty, inflation, and most importantly, stop the genocide in Gaza.
Currently, main concern is the genocide and the occupation and the injustice.
Abraham Jaber came down to Chicago from Waukesha, Wisconsin. He says this is the least people can do for what is happening in Gaza.
We've always lived in that part of the world. We have lived in that part of the world with Jews and Christians as brothers and as family.
I'm Rylan Petras.
Former President Barack Obama and second gentleman Doug Emhoff will speak on the second day of the DNC. Obama and Emhoff will turn the party's attention towards Vice President Harris and her face-off against Republican Donald Trump. Harris travels to Milwaukee today for a rally in the swing state of Wisconsin before returning to Chicago tonight. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Israel has accepted a proposal to bridge differences, holding up a ceasefire hostage release agreement drafted by President Biden to end the war in Gaza. But Blinken offered no specifics as he called on Hamas to also accept the proposal. He did not say whether the bridging proposal addresses concerns by Hamas. Officials familiar with negotiations say Israel wants a lasting military presence in a buffer zone along the Gaza-Egypt border and in an area Israeli forces carved out to cut off northern Gaza from southern Gaza. It's unclear whether Israeli control over these areas is part of a proposal the U.S. has called on Hamas to accept to break the ceasefire impasse. Senior Hamas official Osama Hamdan dismissed the proposal in an interview with Al Jazeera, speaking through an interpreter.
According to what we have received from the mediators, Israel came to the meeting in Doha with new demands and more conditions that contradict Biden's proposal. There is no doubt that there is an attempt to plant optimism. This optimism is trying to hide many of the obstacles that the Israelis are creating.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Israeli military says it's recovered the bodies of 6 hostages taken in Hamas's October 7th attack, which sparked the war. An Israeli airstrike today west of Gaza City killed at least 12 people at a school-turned-shelter. Israel said the strike was on a Hamas command center. Another strike killed a mother and her 5 children in central Gaza. Russian authorities are struggling to put out a massive fire in the southern Rostov region for a 3rd day after Ukrainian drones struck the oil depot. This as Ukrainian forces push into Russia's Kursk region. Ukraine's president Volodymyr Zelensky says the incursion has allowed his army to capture a significant number of prisoners who could be used, a number of soldier prisoners who could be used in exchange for captured Ukrainians. A day earlier, he said Ukraine sought to create a buffer zone that might prevent further attacks by Moscow across the border, particularly with long-range artillery, missiles, and glide bombs. Russia's now using boats to evacuate residents in the Kursk region after Ukraine damaged 3 bridges to it. Monday was World Humanitarian Day. The United Nations held a ceremony noting last year was the deadliest year for aid workers. 280 killed in 33 countries, a 137% increase, or more than double the deaths in 2022. The UN warns 2024 is set to surpass those numbers with multiple wars around the world. The Congo will receive the first vaccine doses to address its Mpox outbreak next week from the U.S. This, according to the country's health minister, days after the World Health Organization declared Mpox outbreaks in Africa a global emergency. Mpox cases have been confirmed among children and adults in more than a dozen African countries. A new form of the virus is spreading. It's been detected in the Philippines and Sweden. I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.